Alright, we're going to be requiring people to wear masks, and so we are required to cover some things about mask wearing with all those who are required to wear them. So, as you know, masks are required for production workers who are working closer together than 6 feet, and other employees, other TMs who are working closer together than 6 feet, more than 2 persons in an office at any time, other TMs working with production employees in the production area closer than 6 feet, we're going to require masks. So, some guidelines in general about mask wearing. Everybody needs to know that masks are not force fields that prevent all infections from viruses or anything else. What they do is they stop most of the droplets that are normally exhaled when breathing. They also stop a lot of the droplets that are expelled by coughs or sneezes, but they don't stop them all. And so you must continue, even if you're wearing a mask, to cough or sneeze into your elbow or into a tissue and throw the tissue away immediately. Now, both wearing a mask and keeping distancing, are mainly intended to stop the spread of virus from someone who doesn't know that they're sick. If you're sick, you've got to stay home. A mask isn't going to protect everyone around you from a symptomatic virus-shedding person, so you can't count on it for that. If you're sick, you got to stay home. Also, you need to be aware that because masks don't stop everything, they just reduce, they're just one tool that we have. It's important to know that distancing is actually believed to be, from studies, even more effective at stopping the spread of infection from an asymptomatic carrier to others than masking. Someone with a mask who's working in really close proximity with someone else for an extended period of time is going to share some of their virus with that person they're working closely with, or sharing the same airspace with for an extended period. So distancing is very important. Masking is just one more tool that we're using. Another thing to remember is that worn improperly, masks can actually be either useless or even cause problems. If you wear them too much, stuff can build up on the inside of the mask that is not really good for you to breathe. It can reduce the net oxygen level that your system is taking in. You can actually be breathing in contaminants that are trapped in the mask. So you can't wear them too long. You can't wear them for too long of a period of time before you take it off and get some fresh air. Another thing is masks that only cover the mouth are next to useless. You must cover both nose and mouth. And when you're outdoors and not right up next to someone, it's best to take it off. Breathe the fresh air. So avoid overuse, avoid using contaminated masks. Now, some have asked whether cloth masks are okay, and they certainly are. These are called surgical masks. These are okay. But they both share the same things we've been talking about. They don't fully block all virus particles from entering your system if someone else is shedding, and they don't completely block all that you might be shedding if you are a carrier. So they're just one tool among many. But now cloth masks, I believe the ones that HEICO is having made for us are cloth, and they have the advantage over the surgical masks that they can be washed and reused. Now, there's a CDC page on washing, and I encourage you to go and look at it, but there's some interesting things about that. Elevated temperatures are usually involved in washing, and the CDC page will tell you to wash them at the highest temperature your cloth can stand and dry them the same way, high temperatures, because high temperatures break down virus particles. Bleach also destroys virus particles. Sunlight, UV radiation, is also known to break down virus particles given enough time. So, can these surgical masks be washed? No. They are really intended for single use. Potentially, if you hung them up in direct sunlight, and you could reuse them, and that would, but you'd need to leave them up for a while, so that's not really recommended either. Theoretically, you could spray them down with Lysol and reuse them, but that's not recommended either. Cloth masks, though, can be washed and reused until they fall apart. Some also, I've read, say that surgical masks like this can be heated to 158 degrees and not burn up and then reused. But if you can get a good supply of the surgical masks, and we do have a number of them, it's best not to use them over and over again. They are intended for single use. Now, some have said that your glasses tend to fog when you wear them. All I can say to that is to experiment with different kinds of masks and different ways of wearing them, and perhaps you can mitigate that problem, make it less of a problem. Contact lenses also might be a solution. One thing Tom has said, I just want to repeat here, is be adults. Don't make others police you. Do the right thing. Protect others from the possibility that you might be asymptomatic. Keep your distance. If you have to be closer than 6 feet, wear your mask. But at the same time, you can feel free to tell others to move 6 feet away from you or to put on a mask. Another thing just to point out is that stopping and talking to someone closer than 6 feet is the same as working with them. So just passing through an area doesn't require that you mask up, but if you stop and talk at closer than 6 feet, put a mask on or keep 6 feet apart. As you may have heard yesterday, if you do use the engineering restroom, we do want you to wear a mask to do that. One final thing in the general guidelines review is just to say that we need you to get here early for your temperature checks. The 6 o'clock group is going to be large, and you can't take a large number of people's temperatures in 2 minutes, and we don't want to back up and wind up being late clocking in because of taking temperatures. So get here early and have your mask ready. Now, some techniques for good mask wearing. Primary importance: wash your hands thoroughly before putting your mask on. Handle the masks only by the loops. Wash your hands thoroughly before taking the mask off. Try not to touch the mask at all once it's on. So, some techniques for doing that. When you pick it up by the loops and position it by the loops. Get it right on your face relative to your eyes before you turn loose of the loops. In other words, don't put it on and then grab it here to adjust it up and down. Loops, adjust up and down, get it right, then put it on. Then you don't have to touch it. Really try hard not to touch it while you're wearing it. That just increases the risk of putting contaminants into your own airways and making the mask less effective for a shorter period of time. Okay, when you take it off, if you can possibly do that, get a container, something like an ordinary plastic container that you can just lay it down in and put a cover on it, preferably with holes drilled in the sides so that air can get in and it won't, it won't do what things do when they're moist and they get stuck in a place with no air transfer. Alright, so especially if you're going to be using a mask often, if you're up and down a lot, working with people a lot, taking it on and off, it's best to have a container like this at your desk that you can set it down and cover it quickly and then just take the cover off quickly, reach in and get it by the loops, position it before letting go of the loops, put it on. Take it off, put it in your container, put the cover over it. That's a good technique. Alright, if possible, you can go to the break room, get your food, coffee, and water with the mask on, and remove it only when you're outside the building or seated at the break room table. That's also good. You want to avoid touching anything but the loops. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, mouth at all times. Alright, one other point that was made yesterday was that a Velcro band can be used to join the loops behind your head if the loops themselves are irritating to your ears. But again, as you take that off, be sure not to touch the mask by anything but the loops if you can possibly help it. Now finally, just another minute or two, this is the OSHA required information, mandatory for persons using respirators. So here goes. And I'm going to be making available a sheet of paper that you can sign that says that you've reviewed this information. Respirators are an effective method of protection against designated hazards when properly selected and worn. Respirator use is encouraged even when exposures are below exposure limits to provide an additional level of comfort and protection for workers. However, if a respirator is used improperly or not kept clean, the respirator itself can become a hazard to the worker. Sometimes workers may wear respirators to avoid exposures to hazards, even if the amount of hazardous substance does not exceed the limits set by OSHA standards. If your employer provides respirators for your voluntary use, or if you provide your own respirator, you need to take certain precautions to be sure that the respirator itself does not present a hazard. You should do the following. Read and follow all the instructions provided by the manufacturer on the use, maintenance, cleaning, and care, and all warnings regarding respirators' limitations, because they all have them. All respirators have limitations. They're all designed to do certain things and they won't do others. So, number 2, choose respirators that are certified for use to protect against the contaminant of concern. NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, certifies respirators. A label or statement of certification should appear on the respirator or respirator packaging. It will tell you what the respirator is designed for and how much it will protect you. Do not wear your respirator into atmospheres containing contaminants for which your respirator is not designed to protect against. For example, a respirator designed to filter out dust particles will not protect you against gases, vapors, or very small solid particles of fumes or smoke. And last, keep track of your respirator so that you do not mistakenly use someone else's respirator. As you might guess, that's not a good idea. So those are things that we just have to go over with everybody who's going to be using one. Our respirators are not tight-fitting. They're not N95. They're not designed to block out, particles down to minute microns and to guarantee your protection against all those things. They are designed as one tool among several to reduce the risk of our contaminating someone else if we are asymptomatic. But distancing is even more important. Let's keep that in mind even as we begin our mask wearing time at REI. Hope you have a good day. Thanks.